Now we will start with the topic inflorescence. Okay. Now what is inflorescence? A natural group cluster on a natural group, that is a cluster of flowers produced on a special reproductive axis, that is the peduncle of a plant, is called an inflorescence. Okay. So we can say that the arrangement of the flowers on the peduncle is nothing but the inflorescence. When produced singly, it is called solitary flower, and when produced in group, then that group is called as inflorescence. Okay. Now flowers are arranged in a definite pattern on a special reproductive branch axis, and this branch is called peduncle. Okay. So the arrangement of group of flowers on the peduncle, in simple terms, we can call it as inflorescence. Now what is the significance of inflorescence? It makes flower more conspicuous, that is visible and attractive. Therefore it is more effective in attracting pollinating agents such as insects or birds. Okay. Moreover, many flowers can be pollinated in a single visit of an agent. In an inflorescence, flowers open successively and not simultaneously. This improves chances of pollination as flowering has a longer period, and different genera of the same family often produce flowers in a particular pattern specific to that family. Therefore, it is one of the criteria for identification and classification of the flowering plants. Okay. So these are the significance of inflorescence. Now comes the basic types of inflorescence. The first one is the racemose. Okay. Now racemose inflorescence, also known as indefinite inflorescence, because its peduncle shows continued growth for an indefinite period. This is possible because the peduncle has an active terminal bud. Okay. So here you will see what a continuous growth. The inflorescence axis never terminate into a flower and really keep growing. The apical bud of the peduncle is never converted into a terminal flower. Flowers are arranged in an acropetal succession. You have to remember this, in acropetal succession, that is, the older flowers of the inflorescence are lower down and the younger flowers are near the apex. Okay, so the older flowers will be at the base and the younger flowers will be at the tip. The order of the opening of flowers in an racemose inflorescence is always centripetal. That is, flowers which are peripheral or lower in inflorescence are older and mature earlier, while the flowers which are in the center or near to the apex of the inflorescence are younger and mature. Okay, you can see this in gulmohar very easily. Okay, so this is what racemose. Here, what are the points you have to remember? That is, it is an indefinite inflorescence. Continuous growth will be seen. The apical bud of the peduncle will not be converted into a terminal flower, and it will be grow in an acropetal succession. Older flowers will be at the base and younger flowers will be on the tip. Okay. Now these are the various types of the inflorescence. This you can just go through, but you can also learn them if you are preparing for any exam like NEET or any other thing. Otherwise you can just go through these slides. The first one is the raceme, compound raceme, spike, catkin, spadix, umbel, compound umbel, corymb, head and capitulum. Okay, so the description is here. In raceme, peduncle has bisexual and pedicellate flowers arranged acropetally. Okay, in spike you have peduncle has bisexual and sessile flowers. In spikelet, it is small special spike. Flowers are produced in the axil of fertile bracts called lemma. And in catkin, it is pendulous spike in leaf axis which bears unisexual flowers. Okay. Other spadix, it is a spike with fleshy axis and having both male and female flowers. It is surrounded by large color bracts called spathe. In corymb, the main axis is short. Lower flowers have long peduncles, pedicels, then upper ones, so that all the flowers are brought more or less to the same level. And in that only we have a compound corymb, that is corymbose raceme is found in mustard. In umbel, the main axis is reduced very much and all flowers appear to be arising from the same point. At the base of the flower, cluster of bracts form an involve. Okay, and in capitulum or head, we have main axis become flat and called receptacle. It bears many sessile and small florets. Peripheral florets called ray florets are pistillate or neuter and zygomorphic, whereas disc floret are bisexual and actinomorphic. See, here you have to remember the shape and the specific characteristics of each inflorescence if you want to do that. Okay, see here, raceme, corymos, raceme, umbel, spike, okay, capitulum, spadix, catkin and spikelet. Okay, now comes the cymose inflorescence. The cymose inflorescence is called the definite inflorescence as its peduncle has a limited growth. This is because the apical bud of the peduncle is converted into a flower. See here, the apical bud is terminated into the flower. Below this apical bud, one or more lateral branches arise. See this lateral branch and this lateral branch. So one or more lateral branches arises, okay, may develop on the main peduncle. These branches terminate into flower, and these are also terminating into the flower. The flowers are thus arranged in basipetal succession on the peduncle, that is the first formed and the oldest flower in the terminal in position, while the flowers produced later, that is younger flowers, are lower down in the position of the peduncle. The order of opening of the flowers is centrifugal. In racemose it was centripetal, here it is centrifugal. The central terminal flower is the oldest and opens first, while the peripheral flowers are younger and open later. You can see this very clearly in jasmine. Okay, so these are examples of this cymose inflorescence. Okay, this is the uniparous helicoid, uniparous scopoid, biparous, multiparous, okay, verticulaster, cynethium and hypothodium. Okay, now comes the seed. What is seed? A seed is defined as a fertilized and metamorphosed ovule containing an embryo enclosed in resistant protective coats. Seed is also described as the initial dormant stage of the diploid sporophytic generation in the life cycle of spermatocytes or phanerogams. Now, if we talk about the structure of dicot seed, we have outer thick and resistant layer which is called testa, inner thin and membranous layer is called tegmen. Seed is attached to the inner wall of the fruit by a stalk called funicle at the point called hilum. A small pore is present close to the hilum in the testa called the micropyle. The ridge may be seen in continuation with the hilum on testa, which is called raphe. Enclosed within the seed coat, there is embryo containing of embryo axis. Okay, and the contents enclosed within the seed coat are together called kernel, and the embryo axis consists of two ends, that is radicle and the plumule. See, for the structure of the dicot or the structure of ovule, you can see my 12th standard videos of the second chapter. Okay, so sorry, of the second chapter, that is reproduction in flowering plants, and there each and everything I have explained. Okay, you don't have to remember each and everything in so much detail, but if you will visualize that, you will be able to learn that. Okay, see here I'll make a diagram. Like the outer layer is thick of the seed, that is called testa, and the inner one is thin and membranous, that is called tegma. When we talk about the ovule, that is seed. Now this is the ovule. Okay, this will be the ovule in this form. Okay, now the attachment point, this one is called this stalk is called the funicle, and this is called the hilum. Here in the ovule you will be able to see a micropyle pore from which the pollen tube will enter. Okay, in this way the diagram will be there. Now the structure of continuation, the cotyledons are attached to the embryonal axis at the region which represent the first node of the embryo. The part of the embryo axis between radicle and the first node is called the hypocotyl, while the part between plumule and cotyledon is called the epicotyl. Most of the dicot seeds are called X-albuminous or non-endospermic because they don't have endosperm, which is a nutritive material and which is there in seed. Okay, so in these kind of seed, that is X-albuminous, this is X-albuminous, and non-endospermic, the entire endosperm is consumed during its development. Okay, now when we talk about the other dicot seeds, there are certain seeds like castor, they possess endosperm and is called albuminous or endospermic seeds. In albuminous seeds, cotyledons are thin and papery, while in X-albuminous seeds, the cotyledons are thick and fleshy and they store necessary reserve food material. Now when we talk about the monocot seed, okay, maize grain will represent a single seeded fruit in which the seed coat and the fruit wall are inseparable. On one side of the grain, a small opaque whitish area is seen. Okay, here you can see this whitish area. Okay, a thin layer lying around the grain is formed by the fusion of seed coat and the fruit wall, which is called hull. The grain is divided into two unequal portions by definite layer known as epithelium. Okay, so the grain is divided into two parts. The bigger portion is the endosperm. This is the endosperm, and the other is the embryo part. This is the embryo part. Okay, the endosperm is the storage tissue. Now, the embryo consists of single shield. Okay, this is the single shield, and this is called cotyledon, and this is also called scutellum. Okay, this particular shield here in this. Okay, this is nothing but the scutellum. The upper portion of the axis is called the plumule. You can see here, the upper portion of the axis is called the plumule. Here, this is the plumule. Okay, and the lower portion is the radicle here, from which the root will arise, and from here the shoot will arise. Okay, the plumule is surrounded by a protective sheath which is called coleoptile. Okay, and the radicle is surrounded by another sheath which is called coleorhiza. Okay, so this was all about the inflorescence and seed.